بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
So, Ahi, we are dealing with a lot of times with people who demand the reason. They are saying to us, you believers, you just believe in things, in fairy tale stories. So how can you prove me existence of God, or how can you reason that God exists? So maybe if you wanna share something with us, and if you wanna maybe introduce yourself and Aira itself, and maybe your YouTube channel as well is called Epistemics.
Yeah.
So maybe some people who don't follow you, they can go and watch some of your videos. So please, Bismillah, the floor is yours.
Yes, inshallah. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. So my name is Imran Hussein. I work with Aira, and I do some volunteering with the Sapiens Institute as well. And the YouTube channel is called Epistemics. So Epistemics. It's spelled a bit different. So you can check out some of the other content in relation to what I normally talk about, which is sort of tackling atheism, new age ideologies, in particular the question of the meaning of life. So a lot of content on that in regards to that, inshallah. So just briefly, I want to sort of share some ideas with everyone today. And like Brother Khidr, you mentioned, that when sometimes when these atheists come to us these days, they're like, oh, you believe in all of this stuff, where's the evidence? And the way they make it seem is that we're on the back foot, that we need to provide evidence, that we're making this lavish claim, this huge claim, which is so crazy, and that you need to provide therefore an immense amount of evidence for what you're claiming. Now, this whole narrative is false. If anything, the crazy claim that's being made is being made by the atheists. The claim that's being pushed and promoted, the secular view, which is that there is no God, there is no creator, this atheist view, and this idea that God is not necessary, it's something people thousands of years ago, hundreds of years ago believed, and they believed this because they didn't have science, they didn't have these advancements, and so on and so forth. This whole claim is the absurd claim, the crazy claim that there is no God. That's what I want to sort of posit today, and I want to engage with today. So I want to sort of turn the tables and sort of highlight today to people that in actual fact, the claim that is crazy, the claim that is absurd, the silly claim is the claim that there is no God, that there is no creator. And I'm going to sort of share some reasons as to why I believe this is the case. Now, obviously, this is going to be a paradigm shift for many people, because normally we grow up in a very sort of secular, godless environment. Our education is very secular. And that doesn't mean that in schooling they will necessarily say there is no God and attack it. But the way we're taught is in a very sort of naturalistic way. The philosophy that's embedded within the hearts and minds of people is of naturalism. And naturalism meaning that all that exists is matter, it's material, it's the physical world, and there is nothing beyond it. There is nothing beyond this material physical system. So therefore, with this foundational idea that's embedded in the hearts and minds of people, and then later on they come across these ideologies such as atheism, naturalism, new age spirituality, and all of this type of stuff, from that perspective, then why it may seem like to people that this idea of God, or to claim the existence of God, is a strange idea and that we need to validate it. And along with this, there's other things such as, science is a brilliant tool. Science is amazing. We've made some amazing discoveries. If anything, it was the Muslims in the past that, picked up on the works of the Greeks and the early thinkers and developed that and developed the sciences. And some of the Muslim thinkers even produced the foundations of the scientific method. So we don't have a problem with science. Science is a brilliant tool. But again, a false idea that's added to everything else is that, science is the be all and end all. Science is the way to truth. This logical positivism, which is taking new forms today, where they're suggesting, or what they want you to believe is science is the only way to truth. Any other knowledge that comes from any other medium or via other means is not knowledge. It's not as good as scientific knowledge. This is a false claim, right? So from that perspective, we can appreciate why people find it hard to believe in God and why people come across like, oh, I need proof for God's existence. But what I want to do now is I want to highlight why denying God is absurd and is crazy. Now, this is the case from many different perspectives. Whether you look at it from an ethical, moral perspective, how do you ground objective moral values and duties? This is a big thing. To ground objective moral values and duties is impossible in the absence of God. You can't do it, although human beings are moral beings, right? Morality is important for us to function in society and have a civilization. We need morals. We need a moral code. Groups, small civilizations, communities, even in the Amazonian rainforest, they may not have a spoken language, but they have a moral code. They have a law, because humans need morality. Civilizations need morality to function, to flourish. Yet, in the absence of God, you cannot ground morality in any objective way. If you remove God and say there is no God, there is no creator, all you're saying then is, well, everything that exists in the universe, including human beings, are a result of just random physical processes, blind processes without any intentionality behind them. It's all right. It's an accident. It's essentially an accident. The simplest way I can put it, according to the atheist naturalist paradigm, is that everything that exists in reality is one big cosmic accident, full stop. There is no rhyme or reason behind it. So therefore, on such a view, on such a worldview, how can you claim objective moral values and duties? That something is objectively wrong and objectively right. To claim such a thing, you need an external anchor. You need an external anchor that you can ground your objective morals in. And if you remove God, you don't have that anymore. You're just in this accidental playground, essentially. So all you have is your subjective opinion, human subjective opinion, right? Different, and the problem there is it's immense, because now you have different people who have different views in regards to what's right and wrong, what's good and bad. It's only subjectivity. Someone may come and say, well, no, it's about social consensus. Groups of people get together and decide what is right and wrong. Well, hold on a second. It's still subjective, subject to a group of people. You can get another group of people in another part of the world which may come together and say something else is good or something else is bad. It's just subjectivity. No matter how many people you clump together, it's still subjective. So morality is a big issue, which is fundamental. Morality being fundamental to us as human beings, to our existence, cannot be accounted for in the absence of God in any objective sense. The universe, right? If we look at the universe, right, and let's go to science for a second. Right? Like I said, science isn't a bad thing. If you look at what science is telling us about the universe today, you look at the laws of physics, the laws that govern the universe, right? You look at mathematics. You look at the fact that you can do mathematics in a classroom, in a lab somewhere, and you can calculate things which are happening out in the physical world. The movement of the planets, for example, you can mathematically calculate these things. And you can match these things up perfectly. And this is why in physics, mathematics is very important, because it's used to corroborate the data that the scientists are picking up on. Now, for you to be able to do this, there has to be physical laws in place within the universe, which govern the things that are taking place within the universe. For example, the movement of the planets, etc. So there are physical laws. Scientists are telling us there is what they refer to as fine-tuning. Even Dawkins acknowledges this, that this fine-tuning, although he may call it a perception of fine-tuning, but he has to acknowledge this on some level, that there are constants and quantities within the physical universe, within the laws, that are precisely fine-tuned. And they have to be so that intelligent life can exist in this world. The laws of logic, right? We know that the laws of logic exist, things that we use them when we're engaging in discussions and so on and so forth. So our universe is governed by laws, right? Our universe has laws in place. Now, where do you get laws from? To have laws, you need a lawgiver. You need a legislator. You're not going to get laws emerging from random blind physical processes. It just doesn't make any sense, right? And we don't even have to get this technical. I mean, if someone just sits and thinks about their existence, if someone just looks in the mirror and looks at themselves and recognizes that, wow, I'm an intelligent human being. I'm a rational human being. I'm a conscious human being. I'm a functioning human being. Can I be the product of just random, blind, cold physical processes? No. It's simple. It just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense intuitively. It doesn't make sense rationally, right? And now that we're talking about rationality, if you think about our cognitive faculties, we have truth-bearing rational faculties, right? And this is, again, just having discussions to engage with someone. You have to acknowledge, you have to assume that we're rational, that we have the ability, the cognitive faculties to arrive at truth. We may not always get at truth, but we have that potential. We can eventually arrive at truth. So we have those cognitive faculties there. How do you explain these cognitive faculties, these rational, truth-bearing cognitive faculties? In the absence of God, you can't do that. Now, again, someone may bring the claim, oh, evolution, evolution can provide an answer. Well, it can't. If you look at the evolutionary scientists, when it comes to rationality, there's a really interesting book that's been written by Thomas Nagel. It's called Mind and Cosmos. And this guy, Thomas Nagel, this professor, he is an atheist himself, right? And the conclusion of his book is, when it comes to consciousness, when it comes to our truth-bearing rational faculties, our cognitive faculties, we have to move away from the naturalistic paradigm to explain these things. This is an atheist that's saying this. I mean, read his book. Because you cannot make sense of these things purely on naturalism. It's impossible, right? So how do you explain this in the absence of God? You can't. It's another mystery, right? But again, you need truth. You need your rational faculties to do science. Because what is science? What do you do when you do science? What you're doing essentially as a scientist is you're observing the physical world. You're using your senses, your sight, your hearing, right? Your taste. You are using these senses to gather data from the physical world. And then when you've got your data, what are you doing with the data? You're reasoning upon the data. You're using your rational faculties to understand the data, to connect the dots. Now, therefore, for you to do successful science, you need to assume that your rational faculties are truth-bearing, that they'll lead you to truth, right? But on a purely naturalistic paradigm, an atheistic paradigm, you cannot provide an account for them. Sure, you have them, but you can't account for them. And therefore, I would say to the atheist or the naturalist, well, you have to then therefore go and reevaluate your worldview, because your worldview doesn't allow you to account for something that you know to be true. And one more thing I want to sort of mention and highlight is meaning, right? This is something I've spent a lot of time researching over the past couple of years, is the question of meaning. Now, meaning is the most fundamental thing to any human being, to any civilization, right? I would say more so than morals and ethics as well. Meaning is the key. Without meaning, we cannot function. We need meaning as human beings. And I was on a live stream yesterday on what was the channel, man? With Brother Mansoor and Hashim and Sheikh Green. Dawwise, yes, mashallah. It was a brilliant live stream talking about New Age spirituality. And one of the things I mentioned there, and I think it's important, is we see a movement amongst the modern secularists. They are driven towards these New Age spiritual movements, and they're moving away from atheism and naturalism, the type of naturalism promoted by Richard Dawkins and the likes, and they're moving towards this type of New Age spirituality. And fundamentally, if you think about this drive, why are people driven towards spirituality and mysticism? One of the fundamental reasons, if not the fundamental reason, is because they're driven towards discovering meaning. It's about meaning. They want to know the answers to the bigger questions of life. Why do I exist? What is the meaning of my life? Right? Now, if you remove God from the picture, there is no God. If you assume for a second there is no creator. Therefore, what does that mean? Like I said, it means that everything that exists is one big random physical accident. That's all it is. And therefore, we as human beings are just accidents as well. On such a worldview, there is no ultimate meaning to life, because it's spilt milk. It's like spilt milk. You spill milk, it's an accident, right? The universe is an accident from their perspective, and everything therefore within the universe is also an accident. Now, this accident, us as an accident, don't have a meaning. Therefore, life is meaningless. Life is ultimately meaningless from the atheist naturalistic paradigm. And I would even go as far as saying that you cannot provide the answer to the question, which is, what is the ultimate meaning of life, in the absence of religion, in the absence of revelation in particular. It's impossible. And the reason is because the answer cannot come from ourselves. We did not create ourselves. No matter what ideology you bring, no matter what philosophy you bring, unless your philosophy provides revelation, your ideology provides revelation, you cannot account for the ultimate meaning of life. There's a new movement recently that's getting popular. It's called analytic idealism. It's the opposite of materialism. What these guys are saying now is, no, it's not matter at the base of everything. It's consciousness. It's this subjective self. The consciousness that's there is at the base of everything, and then that projects the material reality. So what they're saying is that the material world around us is an illusion of this conscious inner self. It's projecting this reality. Now they try to account for, some of the proponents are trying to say, oh, materialism couldn't provide meaning of life, but our analytic idealism can. And they try to present the arguments. But the point is, although at best they may open the doors to meaning, but still they can't definitively tell you what the ultimate meaning of life is, even on their worldview, because for that to happen, they need revelation from what they call the ultimate consciousness. And unless they have this knowledge that comes from the outside to them, they cannot come up, they won't know what the ultimate meaning of life is. So point being that no ideology, no worldview, no way of life can provide you with the ultimate meaning of life unless it's a revealed tradition, right? And this is where Islam comes in. And sure, you may say, well, there's other religions, they claim revelation, and they are, definitely. But when you study those religions and you look at what they have to say in regards to man, life, and the universe, what you see is that they may answer some questions, but in other areas, they'll fall short. They may contradict themselves in certain areas. But when you look at Islam, Islam is the only way of life, the only religion which gives a comprehensive account of reality. It doesn't leave any loose ends. It makes sense of every aspect of reality. It tells us what the meaning of our lives is. It tells us why we exist in this world. It tells us why we go through trials and tribulations and hardships, why we suffer. It gives us the answers to every single question that we have as human beings. And it's in line with what we even just naturally perceive about the world around us. I'll give you one example. As if we really think about life and the world around us, an intelligent person would realize that, wait, hold on a second. On one level, there is immense order, like I spoke about. There are the laws of physics that govern the universe. There is mathematics and mathematical laws. There are logical laws. There is precise order on one level. But on another level, there is a type of chaos on a social level. We suffer, we go through trials and tribulations, bad things happen. So there are these two levels. How do you make sense of this? From my research, I haven't come across any, again, ideology, worldview, any other religion that makes sense of even these two levels except Islam. Islam makes sense of both of these levels. Allah has given us that one level where there's immense order. And Allah tells us in the Quran that He has created signs within the physical universe. He tells us to look at the physical universe, study the universe, look at the clouds, look at the sun, look at the moon, look at the orbits of the planets, look at yourselves, look within yourselves. Allah tells us this. And you will find signs of Allah within these things. And we do when we study these things. We see there is immense order within these things, right? Which therefore means that they require an explanation outside of themselves. But on another level, Islam also makes sense of the chaos in life, the hardships, the trials, the tribulations, because Allah tells us in the Quran that He created life and death to test which of us is best in deeds. So we will be tested with many different means, through hardship, trials, loss of life, loss of wealth, etc. Right? So Islam makes sense of every aspect of reality, and it's comprehensive. So just to summarize, what I'm trying to get across to people is, if you really sit down and think about life in the absence of God, you will realize that you can't make sense of life. You can't make sense of reality. You can't account for the things that are necessary for you to function as a human being, to function as a society, as a civilization, to do science. You can't make sense of the fundamental things that are required to do all of these things in the absence of God. So when you've recognized this and you realize this, then you also realize, well, God is a necessity. God is not a luxury. It's not a case, I'm going to see if I need God or no. If you really think about it, you need God. The world needs God. Humanity needs God. Civilizations need God. Science needs God. So if anything, the tables are really turned, and we should be asking the question to these atheists: how do you justify such an absurd claim that there is no God? That's the question we need to be asking these atheists and naturalists. So we need to turn the tables on them. Sure, there's this perception, but the reality is totally different. they are in the position where they need to justify this literally is hocus pocus, magic. They are claiming magic. They are claiming absurdities, that there is no God. Without God, you can't make sense of reality, inshallah. I just wanted to share this with everyone, inshallah. So yeah, we can open up the discussion now, bro, inshallah. However you'd like to do it, inshallah.
Barakallahu feek, akhi, mashallah. There are a couple of questions in the chat. So does anyone, brothers, does anyone wants to ask something, or should I just post some chats? All right, then I'll post some chat. We have a Philip Robert, who's usually we debate with him. He's atheist. We debate with him on Facebook. So he's making some claims that we already answered privately. But maybe if you wanna answer it, he's saying here that objective moral values are not grounded in God, since people believe in many different gods. Therefore, there are many different objective morals. He's kind of making a straw man.
Yeah, this is a straw man. He's not addressing the main point. What I'm saying is that you need the only way to ground objective moral values and duties are in God. That point is, he's not refuting that point. He's saying, well, there's many gods. So we can address that, but first you acknowledge that you need God to ground objective moral values and duties. That's the first point. That's the first question. Once you acknowledge that, then we could talk about the different views on gods, etc. But the point I was making is that in the absence of God, we don't need to get into specifics. In the absence of God, you cannot ground objective moral values and duties. What he's saying is a secondary question, right? That's what you address once you acknowledge that, okay, I understand and I acknowledge that you need God to ground objective moral values and duties. Once you acknowledge this, then we can talk about the other gods and the other views and so on and so forth.
MashaAllah. So therefore, he straight away backtracked a little bit and said that there is no objective morality. So he is kind of, folding, to be honest. At the end of the day, Philip, if there is no objective morality, so then you're just a bag of bones and meat, and same as if you go to a butcher shop, whatever's hanging.
Yeah, and
there's no difference.
No difference. And think about the implications of what you're saying. Sure, you can say there is no objective morality. Fine, they can say that. They're in the right to say that. But what are the implications of that? What are the and this is scary if you think about it. We have to be responsible as human beings. When you say there is no objective morals, what you're saying is that morality is subjective. Morality is subjective. Meaning what? Meaning it is what I want it to be. It is what we think it is. Right? So my morality is my morality, your morality is your morality. That is a very dangerous thing, because now morality becomes loose. And once it becomes loose, you can use it. And we've seen historical examples of this. The Soviet Union, and so there's many examples, right? Where such ideas were implemented on a state level. And then what that means, because it's so fluid, there's no grounding to it. You can use it. You can just twist it and change it like you will to suit your objectives. So you can justify anything then, and that's dangerous. That's very, very dangerous. It's like saying, imagine you're walking down a dark road at night, and you see an alley, and in the alley there is this evil man who is torturing a young child for no reason. Now you go up to him as a sane human being, and you say to him, what you're doing is wrong. Stop doing that. And he can just turn around and say to you, no, I think it's right. So what are you going to do? It's his subjective opinion against your subjective opinion. It's a crude example, but it's just to highlight the point that it's a very dangerous thing to say morality is subjective, because what you're saying is it is what I want it to be. Yeah, people haven't functioned like that throughout history, and people don't function like that today.
Yeah, it's kind of a cognitive dissonance what he's doing, because at the end of the day, many times we had a conversation, and he's claiming some moral grounds. He's making emotional, moral arguments against us. But then he has no anchor on it. So it's only my feelings against your feelings. Yep. So who feels what? It really doesn't make any sense. There
is no moral obligation anymore. There is no ought that presses down on people anymore. So it's and the moral ought that presses on people is a natural drive for people to do things, to function. So again, many problems with that view.
Anything goes. Literally anything.
And he, therefore, from today onwards, he has no right to point the finger at religion. and he has no grounds to say, oh, this is bad in Islam or this is wrong in Islam, because his view is just subjective. It means nothing. It's ephemeral. It's just subjective. So he can say all these things, but they mean nothing now.
So many times I point to them, okay, fair enough. We have social construct around us of morality, whatever we have. So by their own recognition, because they say there is no God, so then Islam is a social construct. So what's your problem then? Why is your social construct better than ours?
Yeah.
You know,
we are people that believe in objective morality, right? So from our perspective, as soon as you say morality is subjective, I am not interested in what you have to say and what your feelings are, because they're just subjective. You know, they have no weight. They have no value anymore.
MashaAllah. MashaAllah. Ahi, shall we maybe give them some arguments? There's a couple of beautiful arguments that we can then bring forward if we need to try to justify God. Fair enough, it's beautiful to turn tables around, but if we prolong the conversation, then sooner or later we'll have to give them some kind of arguments, because they'll say, okay, so fair enough, I can't do it, so now you do it. Yeah, if they're intellectually honest. If not, they're just going to be waving with a hand and puffing and, you know, getting emotional and angry on us. But if they really want to engage, then they'll say, okay, fair enough, I don't have arguments. So what's your argument then? So what's the best arguments that you can?
So there's many arguments. One of the arguments which I really incline towards is what we refer to as the Quranic argument for God's existence. Now, in chapter 52 of the Quran, verses 35 and 36, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the translation, were they created by nothing, or were they the creators of themselves, or did they create the heavens and the earth? And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala concludes by saying, but rather they are not certain, or that they don't want to be certain. Now, these two ayat of the Quran are very powerful, because through a process of elimination, Allah is taking you to the most rational, intuitive conclusion, which is that there has to be a creator or cause behind the universe. So if we just break this down briefly, number one, Allah is saying, were they created by nothing? The question we can ask is, can something come from nothing? Right? Could the universe come from nothing? Right? And again, the sane person would say, no, it's impossible. Out of nothing, nothing comes. Nothing in and of itself is nothing. It has no potential. It can't produce or give rise to anything in any way, shape, or form. So you can cross that first option out. The universe could not come from nothing. Or were they the creators of themselves? Were they created by nothing? Or were they the creators of themselves? So here we can ask, could something create itself? Right? Could something create itself? Now this is an absurdity, right? How can something bring itself into existence? If we just think about it, because to create yourself, so if we were to ask this about the universe, could the universe create itself? Well, let's think about this. For the universe to create itself, it has to already exist, because it has to do the action of creation, of creating itself. But if it already exists, then how is it creating itself? Because it's already in existence. So this is an absurdity, right? So you can cross this option out as well. It's impossible. Then Allah says, were they the creators of the heavens and the earth? Now, there's many ways we can look at this part of the ayah, and it's profound on many levels. If we look at in a more direct way, where Allah is saying, were they the creators of the heavens and the earth? The human can't even make sense of its own existence, right? Allah is asking, the first ayah, Allah is asking us, did we come from nothing? The focus is on me. And you're thinking about yourself psychologically. Can I create myself? No. Could I come from nothing? Could I create myself? No. You're thinking about yourself. And then there's a shift, right? You can't even make sense of your existence, but then Allah takes it up another level and He says, or are they the creators of the heavens and the earth? You can't make sense of your small, trivial existence. Look at this entire universe around you. You know, Allah says, did you create the universe? Absolutely not. And it humbles you. If you're honest and sincere, it will humble you at this point. You will feel ashamed. You know, I can't make sense of my existence. How in the world can I make sense of the existence of the universe? Now, another way we can look at this ayah is, could something create something that came into existence before it? Let me repeat that again. Can something create something that came into existence before it? So Allah is asking us, did we create the heavens and the earth? The heavens and the earth came into existence before us from a material perspective. We were born into the universe. So the universe came there before us. So how can something create something that came into existence before it? It's impossible, right? So that doesn't make sense. Now, a third way you can look at this is, could the universe be created by another universe which was created, right? So on one level, okay, you can say, yeah, sure, our universe could be created by another universe, right? Well, then you can ask the question, what created that universe? Someone may say another universe. Well, what created that universe? Another universe. And if you go on forever like this, it's an infinite chain. Now, the problem with that is you can't traverse the infinite, right? So there has to be a first cause, a starting point. So it's an impossibility. It doesn't make any sense. And then Allah says, but rather they are not certain, right? Or they don't want to be certain. And Allah leaves the conclusion open to us. What is the only possibility that's left? That the universe and everything that exists was created by an uncreated creator. That is the most sound, rational conclusion. And I've just summarized this argument. If you want the detailed version of this argument, you can find it in Hamza's book, The Divine Reality. He's outlined this argument in a lot of detail, mashallah, with references and stuff. So you can check it out there, inshallah. But it's a beautiful argument because it takes you through the process of elimination. You eliminate all the possibilities. And it's amazing the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts it in the Quran. He doesn't give us the conclusion. He doesn't give us the fourth option. You know, he wants you to use your aql that he's given you. He wants you to use your intellect, use your rational faculties, and come to the conclusion yourself that okay, first option doesn't make sense, second option doesn't make sense, third option doesn't make sense. The only option that's remaining is that the universe was created by an uncreated creator. That's the most reasonable, rational conclusion one can draw.
MashaAllah. If we look at it, it looks like a beautiful set deductive argument, but it leads you to make a conclusion yourself. So it's literally what science does today. Science deals with the deductive arguments. You choose the best option, and then until the better option comes, you need to stick with it. So absolutely. If the atheists want to be intellectually honest, they should go with the best option available. MashaAllah. Alhamdulillah. Akhi, there is an argument very popular. I don't know if you are using it a lot. I've seen you, but I've seen quite a lot of brothers are kind of moving away from it because Quranic arguments are the best arguments. The argument from contingency or dependency. Maybe if you want to break that down for us.
Yeah, so it could be, you could present it in many ways. The simple version that I like, and I think it makes sense, it's easy to explain, is that, look, things are either dependent or necessary. Right? Those are the two states any given thing could be in. Something is either necessary or something is either dependent. Now, when it comes to dependent things, they have certain qualities, they have certain attributes, hallmarks that highlight to us that I think is dependent. Right? So, for example, if I was to ask everyone, is this bottle necessary or is it dependent? Right? You would quickly say it's something that's dependent. Right? Now, when you look at all dependent things, you would see that there are some things that stand out about those things. Well, one, they have limited physical qualities. Right? They have a certain size, structure, shape, occupy a certain space, in space, etc. Their fundamental building blocks could be arranged in different ways. That's another aspect of them. So, for example, if you take this bottle and you break it down, you can arrange this in many different ways, right? Another thing is and here's what's interesting. Dependent things require something outside of themselves for their existence, right? So this bottle has to be made in this way by something outside of itself, arranged in this way by something outside of itself, right? So these are some features or aspects or qualities or attributes of dependent things. Now, if you look at the universe and you analyze the universe, you realize that the universe is dependent. It's not necessary. It has limited physical qualities. Its fundamental building blocks could be arranged in different ways, and there are some other aspects to it. Therefore, we can ask the question, well, what is our dependent universe dependent upon? Now, again, like the previous argument, you can go into an infinite regress of dependencies one dependent thing bringing rise, another dependent thing bringing rise, another dependent thing. Or you can just conclude that our dependent universe is dependent upon something outside of itself, which is necessary, right? That it's impossible for it to not have existed, right? So this is, and that necessary cause we refer to as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is the necessary being, the creator, the uncreated creator that has created everything, and everything is dependent upon. And this is also, again, this is a Quranic argument, and there's many ways you can link this to the Quran. For example, in Surah Ikhlas, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that Allah says, Allahus Samad, that He is As-Samad. And As-Samad, the word Samad is very interesting lexically as well, because it's translated as the absolute, the eternal, right? Which is a correct translation, but it also means it's the thing that is completely independent of everything else. Yet everything in existence, everything is dependent upon that thing. As-Samad is the one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that is completely independent, free of any need, and everything in existence, every single atom, every single molecule, everything that we can see, that we can't see, everything is dependent upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, and again, the argument is in line with what we believe about the creator of the universe.
MashaAllah, we can look at it. There's a brother that I picked up a beautiful argument, even mathematical argument. If you want to bring any other number, you need to start with 1, because they are compiled with 1. So there is even Tawheed in mathematics, if you look at it that way. Any other number you bring up, there needs to be 1 for you to come to 10 million or whatever.
Yes.
MashaAllah is beautiful. There's one question here from one of our followers. I think you addressed it a little bit, so maybe you could elaborate a little bit. How does science explains the origin of consciousness? Yeah, I think you did say it. Maybe if you want to. Yeah.
So again, reference for everyone. Hamza's book, The Divine Reality, has a brilliant chapter on consciousness and the hard problem of consciousness. So definitely read that and check that out. But in a nutshell, science doesn't explain consciousness. What you have is what they refer to as the hard problem of consciousness, meaning that there is an aspect of our subjective experience which cannot be stuck into a test tube and studied, right? The best scientists can do is they can hook you up to a monitor and they can study your brain waves, the different brain waves that take place, right, on a monitor. And what they could do is they can, for example, they can give you a drink, a juice, or a piece of chocolate, and they can study and see when you're eating the chocolate and when you're enjoying the chocolate, they can see how your brain waves change. So they can correlate, right? They can see that there is a change in brain waves when you have a piece of chocolate. But what they can't do is they cannot quantify or study the first-person subjective experience that we have when, for example, Khidr eats a piece of chocolate. What he feels, that cannot be quantified by science. And that is the hard problem of consciousness. Now, there's many debates. Some naturalist scientists, they would completely deny consciousness. They would say consciousness is an illusion. So it's an illusion that's created by the brain. It is only the brain. The mind is the illusion. The self, the subjectivity, this consciousness is just an illusion of the brain. And it's a very weak opinion. Again, it's just purely speculation, to be honest. And it's done because it's in line with their worldview, of naturalism and atheism. But most atheist academics would recognize that the hard problem is probably the hardest problem within science. And that is a hard problem of consciousness. They cannot fully quantify it. How it works, sure, there's probably a link between the brain, the physical brain, and our conscious state. But just because there's a link, it doesn't mean one gives rise to the other, right? This is something they're trying to study and understand. But again, it's something that's beyond the scope of material science in some respects, because it's not physical. Consciousness isn't physical, like, for example, the table is physical or the chair is physical. And if it isn't, then it can't be studied empirically.
You can't put it in a lab. You can't measure it. You can't put it on a scale. MashaAllah. By the way, Sheikh Faiza is actually revising, or he will start revising Hamza's book, because they are translating it in our language. So very soon,
inshallah,
will be with us on the shelves, inshallah. Now, Philip has made another silly statement, so I'll share it. As so contingency, let us claim anything is necessary. How would you prove something is not necessary? Philip, you exist. It's not necessary that you exist. But I'll let Brother Imran. We still have
like I said, and I would encourage Philip to read the contingency argument in The Divine Reality, and I think Hijab has a book as well. It's called
Kalam. He starts with the Kalam, I think.
No, I think it's the Burhan. His book, The Burhan. Yeah, that's the one where he's given a really detailed. Basically, it's the full academia behind the contingency argument. He goes into the Islamic tradition and some of the scholars and how they formulated the argument through the centuries. So you got both references there if you want to study it on different levels. But the point is that, like I said, that dependent things are dependent because they have certain aspects to them which necessitate the dependency, right? So, for example, we know this bottle is arranged in a particular way, right? The base materials, the base parts, even the atoms of this bottle could have been arranged in 1,000,001 different ways. You can take this bottle apart and you can arrange it in 1,000,001 different ways, but it's arranged in a particular way, right? And if it's arranged in a particular way, then we have to ask the question, what arranged it in this particular way as opposed to any other way, right? So therefore, this bottle is dependent. It's not necessary. It does not have to exist. It did not have to exist. It did not have to exist in this particular way. It could have existed in 101 different ways, right? So this is just one reason, one way we can establish that this bottle is dependent and not necessary. And this applies to everything else that's dependent, whether it's a book, a person, a table, a chair, etc.
And of course, you can impose that on the universe. There's the book you've been referring to.
Yeah.
And as much as I'm aware that Brother Mohammed Hijab is doing a PhD on it at the moment, I don't know how successful.
I believe so.
I hope they accept it, because it's a metaphysical argument that he's bringing forward, and usually academia doesn't like metaphysical arguments too much. So, but mashallah, good read for those who like to think. And I believe you have it on Sapiens Institute, free to download as well.
Yes, I believe it's on the Sapiens website.
So
all the books.
All the books you can get. Whoever knows English, all the books you can get on Sapiens Institute or on aira.org. You can get them there.
There's some really good books on aira.org as well, such as The Eternal Challenge. That's a really good one for non-Muslims that are interested in the miracles of the Quran specifically. That's a very good book, inshallah.
Akhi, when you said miracles, why do we theists claim miracles, and how would you present miracles? What is a miracle? If someone would try to belittle us and say, "Oh, you guys believe in miracles and we believe in I don't know, in science, in things that we can prove," how would you confront that claim?
Yeah, so what is a miracle? How would you so the question is, how do you define a miracle? In a nutshell, a miracle is something that goes against all known norms and the norms of the universe, the norms of the laws of the universe. Anything that breaks the norm from that perspective, goes against what's not possible in the context of our universe and our reality. That's what you refer to as a miracle. Now, when we say the miracles of the Quran, we are specifically referring to aspects of the Quran which defy any explanation, any natural explanation, right? And there are several. One, for example, the linguistic and the literary miracle of the Quran, and again, in a nutshell, and I'm not going to do it any justice by explaining it here, but I'll give you references to where you can read up on this, is one of the phenomenal things about the miracle of the Quran is that the Arabic of the Quran, the construct of the language itself that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us as the Quran, it cannot be replicated. It cannot be challenged. We know every language, has a structure, right? Even the Arabic has prose and prose and poetry, and then within poetry you have different breakdown of different rhythmical patterns, and then prose you have a breakdown of that as well. Now, every language, everything that's said in Arabic will fall if it makes sense, if it's not just gibberish, everything that's said or written in Arabic would fall into that construct of the language. And this applies to any language. English has that as well. It has prose, poetry, and it has a framework. And anything that's written in the English language with sound grammar that's not gibberish would fall into that construct. It'd either be a type of prose or a type of poetry, etc. Same applies to the Arabic. But what's phenomenal and unique about the Quran is that it's neither prose nor poetry. And yet it makes clear sense. It's not gibberish. You read it, you read a translation, you know it makes sense. You read the Arabic, if you know the Arabic, you know it makes sense. It's concise. If anything, it's more precise than any other literature in the Arabic language. You know, as far as the specific words that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses to describe specific things, small nuances like this, all of this, right? So the miracle here, the thing that blows your mind is the Quran is in Arabic. It makes sense. It's coherent. If anything, so much so that once after the revelation of the Quran was used as the standard for the Arabic language. It was so phenomenal. Yet it doesn't conform to any of the known structures of the Arabic language. It doesn't fit into one category or the other. This has baffled Arabists and Arabic scholars and so on for centuries. And we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes the challenge in the Quran that if you're in doubt as to what we have revealed, then produce something like it. Produce a chapter like it in one place. Right, and we know there were poets at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. You know, his name is not coming to me. One of the famous poets at the time who was sent to challenge the Prophet ﷺ. And when he heard the Quran, he went back and he said, "I have studied the poetry of men and jinn, yeah, but I have never heard of anything like this. You know, this is something else." You know, and the Arabs at the time were best suited to meet the challenge, because every language goes through a peak and then it dips, right? So for example, in English, people would argue, most English historians would argue that at the time of Shakespeare, English was at its peak. And then after that, you know, especially now recently with slang and new words and all of this, it's declining, the English language. Every language has a peak. The Arabic had a peak as well. And most would agree that it was at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. The Arabs at the time, the Arabic was in its most purest form. Right, it had reached that pinnacle of the language. Yet those Arabs were not able to challenge the Quran. So if they could not do it, I don't think anyone else is going to be able to do it. Right? And they failed. And people have tried and failed throughout the centuries. And the challenge is still open. You know, so that's one of the unique miracles, we would say, of the Quran, because again, it defies reality. How do you make sense of this? It's in Arabic, it makes sense, it's coherent, it's the standard of Arabic now, yet it does not conform to the known forms of the Arabic language. And Hamza has a brilliant article on this. It's called Divine Speech on his website, Hamza Zortz's. That's a good place to check this out. And I think in his book as well, he has a chapter on this particular argument as well, inshallah.
Barakallahu feek. Barakallahu feek. I see Philip is making some silly statements, so he's literally not wanting to address anything. Yes,
he's not important anymore.
Brother Imran, can I raise one interesting point so you can address it for our viewers?
Yes, brother.
So basically, if we take out all the intellect behind the creation, only thing left is randomness. So the randomness is like the biggest fake god nowadays in modern era, and they're all those ideologies relies on the randomness because they cannot explain nothing without the God, without the intellect behind the creation. So it's like some mystic power which is acting randomly in our universe, and they can reflect on that and think that this is something which is normal and this is something which is consistent. And how you will deal with this, that the randomness is the main model of these people who do not believe in God, in intellect behind creation, and how they are satisfied with this possibility that random events can lead to anything, that anything normal in our universe. We see the order, we know that everything is intelligently designed and fine-tuned. And of course, you know, like some things can seem to us that is random, but it's only in the nutshell. If we study deep and if you know the mathematics and the physics, the laws, the patterns which can occur, if we know the all details, we will understand that nothing is random in our universe, and then there is no random events around us. So can you reflect on this?
Yeah, it's a very good point, bro. And you know, different people will take different spins on this. So the hardline naturalists, atheists, they would say, they will bring what I call the time hypotheses, if you like, into it. They'll say randomness with enough time, right, will give rise to order, right, and it'll give rise to our universe, right? Well, even if we entertain that for a second and say that's true for a second, just for the sake of argument, well, still, it's still a result of randomness, and therefore there is no ultimate meaning, there is no objective morality. None of these things still make sense, right? So that's one big problem right there. Secondly, if you just look at it from the perspective of the point, one has to ask and really be honest with themselves at this point and say, why are you going with the most unlikely option, right, as opposed to the most rational conclusion when it comes to God? And when it comes to everything else in your life, you use common sense and you go with what's most likely, what's most reasonable, what's most rational. For example, and with these guys, what I normally do is I ask them, look, if I was to blindfold you, put a blindfold on your eye, and if I was to take you to one of the busy highways, busy motorways in London, and I told you to run across the road blindfolded, would you do it? They'll be like, no. And I would say, why? They'll say, well, chances are I'll get hit by a car. I say, good. So what's the chances of that happening? They'll say maybe 80%, 90%. And then I'll say to them, well, okay, but there's 10% chance that you won't get hit by a car. There's 5% chance you won't get hit by a car. Why don't you go with that 5% as opposed to the 80% chance? Why? Because it's not reasonable. It's not rational. It's not common sense. Humans always go with what's most likely, even if it's 60% chance, 70%, 80% chance. But when it comes to God, they will change their standards. They no longer go with what's most likely, and they will go with what's very unlikely, just to deny God, just so they don't have to acknowledge God, right? And this is why they'll say, yeah, chance, just enough time, the right circumstances, and it happened, right? Sure, if they want to argue that, let them argue that. But with people like that, we have to highlight to them that there is an inconsistency in your logic and in the way you're reasoning. You're being very inconsistent. If you're applying one standard to when it comes to the origins of the universe, and you're applying another standard to when it comes to everything else in your life, why the inconsistency? You know, we should get them to realize, well, there's something else going on. It's almost like you don't want to believe in something, and to deny God, you are now going with the most unlikely option. But with everything else, you use reason and logic and common sense. But with this, you'll go with a 0.000000005% chance of the universe coming into existence by chance, right? Just doesn't make any sense. So that's the naturalist. Then some people you have, you know, they will say, they'll refer to the universe. They'll say the universe created everything. But these people, they don't go any further than this. They'll never try explaining what they mean, how the universe created everything, how the universe created itself. As we already saw, the universe can't create itself. It's impossible. But they won't delve into this. They just will say, yeah, the universe. And it's almost what they do is they take the attributes or some of the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and they give it to the universe. The universe has the ability to create. You know, the universe is looking out for you. These new age type of ideas. So with these people, you just have to just push a bit further and ask them, well, what do you mean by this? You know, how do you make sense of this? What do you mean by the universe created everything? How did the universe create itself? You know, and then just get them to reflect upon those things, inshallah. Hopefully that answers the question, bro, inshallah.
Yeah, for sure. But I can maybe note that as well, if we consider that randomness exists, which is absurd, how you mentioned, because nothing in this universe acting randomly. And if we have a laws of mathematics and physics, which is working, so we have formula, and formula is always giving the same result, that means that nothing is random here, because you have the patterns which are working, and in the 1 million of times, every time they will give the same result. So it's not random. If you have one random universe which is acting with a random force behind, you will have popping out different results all the time.
Yeah,
you will have random universe which you can never been certain of anything. Like in our lives, in our relationship with this universe, we see the sun, we see the moon, we see the rain. Like in the Quran, they describes these cycles, that everything is coming in this reality with the cycles. So the God is telling us, so as we can make life from the dead ground, so we can rise you again from after you are dead, we can give you the life again. So everything is cycle. So we have these cycles in the nature, in the universe. They follow the certain pattern, so we can be sure that these cycles are not random. It's like the you know what I mean. So
yeah, absolutely, bro. It's a very powerful point. Even if they say, oh, somehow randomness resulted in order, well, why does it remain in order? Why doesn't it go back to randomness? Right?
Exactly.
There's no reason for it to be uniform. There's no reason for the universe to maintain this order, maintain the laws, maintain all of these things. There's no reason for it. They call it the uniformity of nature. Again, it's another mystery. They can't explain
it.
I would maybe add here, it's like claiming that mathematics are random. So why is it always 1 + 1 is 2? Okay, sometimes 1 + 1 + 1 becomes 1 for certain people and certain groups, but that's a different subject. But why is maths not random? It's literally claiming if everything is random, then we shouldn't have these kind of processes. They always bring.
Absolutely. And brother, it's amazing when you think about it, subhanAllah. Look, one thing that there is order in the universe. That's there. The second thing is that there is a being that came into existence in this universe, the human being, that has the ability, the faculties to understand this, unpack this order. Humans do mathematics, right? It's amazing. We can do it. We can understand it. We can understand this order. How it's just layers upon layers, subhanAllah. It's just impossible to, when you start thinking about it, I don't understand how people can say there is no higher power creator that created everything and ordered everything.
MashaAllah, barakallahu feek. I don't know how much more time you have.
I got 10 minutes more, bro, inshallah.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Okay, so I would like to then ask you maybe to shift the conversation a little bit out of a topic. Because Aira is recognized as the most successful, mashallah, or the most popular, how will I say, what was the word? Evangelizing, but dawah. How would I translate dawah?
Dawah center.
Missionary organization.
Yeah, the most recognized missionary organization in the world. So what kind of advices would you give in general Muslims? How should we behave? Because you've been there from the beginnings. So what kind of advice would you give us? Because there's a lot of Muslims in especially in our countries where we come from that they are kind of lazy. They just do their duties. Fair enough, alhamdulillah, they pray. Whoever prays, they fast. Whoever fasts. But there's no inviting, so there's a big chunk missing. We are kind of representing Islam through these streams. So if you can just these last 10 minutes maybe give us a couple of advices and maybe some lessons that you learned from because you remember at the beginning it wasn't so nice as maybe today. We've seen last year you had 50,000 shahadas and mashallah you're already in 100 countries, but you started in a small office. Arguing how we're going to proceed and what we're going to do. So maybe
bro, I think the most fundamental thing for Muslims, especially the youth, the younger Muslim brothers and sisters, is one of the biggest problems that we're having, like before even which leads to them not getting involved in da'wah eventually and not giving da'wah and not thinking it's important. The real fundamental reasons are that Muslims are just not connected with Islam in the way they should be, right? Meaning, for a lot of young Muslims, Islam, what is Islam for them? It's it's a religion. It's a religion of my parents. I have a Muslim name. Some pray Jummah. Some understand, Ramadan, fasting the month of Ramadan. Some may understand these 5 daily prayers. So for Muslims mainly, it's a list of do's and don'ts, right? It's a list of do's and don'ts. And let's be honest, that's for young Muslims living today in the world that we live in today, with all of these crazy ideologies and all of these crazy worldviews and, you know, all of this craziness out there, do's and don'ts are not appealing to the modern mindset, right? And we also have to get them to understand that Islam isn't just do's and don'ts. That is an integral aspect of Islam. That is the guidance from Allah. But before you act upon the guidance, they need to understand why they need to act upon the guidance. You know, they need to understand some core concepts, as I refer to them. There are core concepts within Islam, which, when understood, build a comprehensive worldview, a comprehensive way of looking at reality and understanding your position within reality as a human being. Right? Allah has given us all of these things, these tools within the Quran. I've got a series on this on my channel. It's called Core Concept. I think it's called Core Concepts series. It's a small series of 4 videos which cover these sort of core concepts for Muslims. But they're simple things like identity. You know, who are you as a human being? What does Allah tell us? What does Islam tell you about your identity? What are you as a human being? Right? Because again, if you look at it from a secular perspective in the world that we live in today, you know, all you're told is that you're an intelligent animal. If you really ask them, they won't say this, but if you ask them and you push them for an answer, they will tell you you are an intelligent animal. You are an animal with a highly evolved brain. That's what you are. That's all you are, right? Now that is depressing straight away, right? Immediately. And if you have that type of mindset, then what are you going to do in life? You're just going to be like, you know what? There's things that make me feel good. There's things that make me feel bad. I'm just going to do things that make me feel good. In most cases, that means fulfilling my desires, have fun, enjoy myself, blah, 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 blah. We know what that means, right? So what is the identity of a Muslim? You know, Muslims need to know this. Allah created you. You know, you are a very unique creation. You know, Allah created Adam with his own hands. You know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you rational faculties. He's given you a base understanding of right and wrong. He's placed you in this world, vicegerent. Allah made Adam a vicegerent. You know, what does that mean? Think about that. You have to live responsibly in this world. You have to do good. You have to take care of humanity, other creatures. You know, you have to prevent bad from happening. You know, so Islam builds, if you really look into it, Islam, as far as your identity is concerned, it builds this very powerful identity. You're not just an animal. You're not just a physical body, a being. You're more than this. And you have a great goal, you know, which is firstly to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what you were created for. That's the ultimate purpose of life. And then you are aiming towards Jannah, paradise, the highest levels of paradise. Your life doesn't end at the grave, you know. So the Islamic worldview, it's totally different from the secular worldview, from the perspective of identity. Then after that, you know, again, purpose of life. Why do I exist? Allah tells us, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. They did not create us for any other reason except to know Him and to worship Him. Right? So what does the secular world tell us? It's all about progress, you know, material progress. You're here to make as much as you can, enjoy yourself, and then you die. Finished, right? But no, you were here to worship Allah. You know, get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to refine your personality and your character in this world through the trials and tribulations you face. Right? Then Allah, therefore that gives context to trials and tribulations and suffering in this world as well. Right? What does suffering mean from a secular perspective? It's just a hindrance to progress. Right? It's just a hindrance to progress. And that's why I believe, you know, the problem of evil, as they call it, it's not a problem for Muslims. It's a problem for the secularists. It's their problem. It's not our problem. We can make sense of suffering. We can make sense of hardships and trials and tribulations. It fits into our worldview, into our paradigm. We're going to be tested, you know, to worship Allah. We're going to be tested. Our sincerity and faith is going to be tested in this world. You know, Allah tells us, you know, just because you say you believe, it doesn't mean you're going to be left alone. So Islam builds a very comprehensive worldview for the Muslim, and young Muslims need to be acquainted with this. They need to find themselves within this worldview, recognize their identity, take it on. Not only understand, okay, Allah created me to worship Him, but then to start acting upon that, living that purpose, right? And that's going to build character. That's going to build the spiritual self. That's going to build the energy and strength people need to get involved in da'wah, you know. But I would also say from a da'wah perspective, you know, you may be excited initially to get involved, and you're zealous and you've got energy. And as you brothers know, after maybe a few years, you start to feel, the energy starts going sometimes, the motivation starts to go, the fun goes, and you realize, okay, this isn't fun, this is serious business. You're calling to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the job of the prophets, so you will get ups and downs in your journey. It will happen, but you need to stick to it. You may need to take time out sometimes. You go back to developing your relationship with Allah, fixing that relationship, then come back again. I've had my ups and downs. I'm sure the brothers you guys have had your ups and downs in the da'wah as well. But is to recognize, first build yourself through understanding Islam and practicing on the fundamentals, right? And then after that, start to then engage in da'wah, and do it slowly. Don't do it. You don't have to do it every day or every week or even once or twice a month. Do what you can, right? Do what you can. There's many opportunities in the da'wah, especially these days. You can write, you can do videos online, you can do street da'wah, you can do exhibitions at mosques, whatever you feel comfortable with. Allah has given everyone a unique skill set. Everyone is good at something. Everyone has unique talents that Allah has given them. Ask yourself, the talents I have, the skills I have, how can I use them for the sake of Allah in the da'wah? Do that. Don't just copy everyone else and do what everyone else is doing. Ask yourself the question, what are my unique skills? How can I use them in the da'wah? Right? And then start doing that. And realize that the da'wah is a part of your ultimate purpose. Because the da'wah is worship. If you do it with the right intention and you do it for the right reasons. Right? So get involved in da'wah to whatever level you can, and do it in a way where it's not too overbearing. Remember, consistency, small deeds which are done consistently, that's the key. So do it in a way you can manage it, and then develop through it over time, inshallah. If you want to do more, you feel like you can do more, then get involved more, inshallah. And it will give your life meaning. It will give your life direction. And a lot of young people, especially young Muslims these days, I don't know the case in other places, but in the UK, I can tell you, being on university campuses for over 10 years now, the university circuit, and doing IAWs, DIWs, I can tell you that young Muslims are very deflated. They're very deflated. And it's not because they don't that we don't have Islam or that we don't have the Quran. All of that's still there. It's preserved. It's because we haven't taken the time to really understand the core concepts of Islam. What is Allah teaching us? What is Allah informing us of? How do I develop myself through Islam? And this is why you see many young Muslims getting carried away and getting impressed by all of these new age gurus and new age leaders and so on and so forth. It's not needed. Everything's there in Islam. Everything. So engage with Islam, learn your basics, get strong with the cause, the core concepts, and then just start giving dawah slowly, inshallah.
Inshallah, barakallahu fiqh. Just a quick question. IAWs, and so you mentioned a couple of, so can you say what it is? Because we're going to translate, so we want to know.
Yeah, IAW, so Islamic Awareness Weeks and, Discover Islam Weeks that take place. MashaAllah, may Allah bless the brothers and sisters involved in the ISOCs. They do a phenomenal job, right, to organize this. Alhamdulillah, at least there's something where Islam is being spoken about on campus at universities. But just the mood generally, you see it, the brothers especially, I don't know what it is, but the brothers especially are very deflated, very just like, they're not taking lead. Men are supposed to take lead, lead from the front. And then you have, unfortunately, then the sisters have to pick up and do what they can. So brothers, young brothers especially, I don't know what it is. There's probably many reasons behind this, but young brothers need to realize that you don't need to go searching for your identity anywhere outside. You have it there. And you have the most powerful examples through the examples of the prophets, the companions. You have the most powerful book. If you adhere to it, you find yourself in it, you will find the meaning of your life. Your life will be worthwhile. But you need to make the effort to go in search of that reality and that truth and to develop yourself.
MashaAllah, the plan is there. You just need to follow it.
Yeah.
Just need to follow the plan. MashaAllah, I'll just maybe mention one thing before you leave, Akhi, because we are holding you a little bit longer than agreed, but MashaAllah. I would advise as well that everyone who starts giving dawah to be careful what he or she is saying, because a lot of times don't believe just someone because he has a long beard and a topi. And to be honest, Akhi, you are one of the reasons when I started reflecting and reevaluating all my Islamic beliefs. I don't know if you remember, I was doing hijama and I quoted a couple of things, and you asked me, where did you get that? And I'm like, yeah, I got it from some guy with a topi and a beard. You know? So
I don't remember, but I do remember the hijama you did for me, bro. SubhanAllah, it was amazing, mashallah. Alhamdulillah.
If you remember, I just mentioned topi, why the topi is necessary, and I mentioned some hadith about picking flowers that woman will be like, and I started, in that moment, I started reevaluating everything. Yes, mashallah, especially for us reverts. We accept Islam and we see some people like me. I'm not a scholar. I'm far away from that. I'm just a person who understands things and tries to share what he got. I got this treasure. So anyway, so then you get excited. You think, oh, okay, everyone who looks apart, he's probably saying the truth. So we need to be careful. We need to be careful, especially there's so many divisions and there's so many different sects and there's so many people saying something that is far away from being verified. So we need to be kind of, even us Muslims, reevaluating, or people who started practicing. Don't trust everyone. Go to the proper sources. Hold on to the scholars or the students of knowledge. Just don't. I fell in a trap. For what reason, brother? I'm preaching on the streets of London for so many years, and no one told me, where did you get that? Because they don't know. I'm preaching to non-Muslims. So someone tells me, why you wear a topi. But remember, the thing I stated is, because shaitan doesn't urinate on your head or something like that. I've picked up in some bravery masjid. So I thought that's probably somewhere in some kind of hadith, But you picked up on it and said, okay, brother, where did you get that? And I was like, okay. So I had to go back to the basics. So it's good sometimes. Don't be overconfident. Don't say things that you cannot back up, that you're not sure if they are on black and white and if they are verified. So that's an important aspect.
Yeah, and online as well, bro. Like, I'll be honest. We've been, you yourself, the brothers here, we've been in the dawah circles, so we know the ins and outs, right? And we have that experience in this sphere now. But like Brother Khidr said, even with us guys, I've tried to be, especially over the past couple of years, as honest as I can. Look, I'm not even a student of knowledge, yeah. So we need to stay in our lane, and unfortunately, the dawah umbrella today on social media, right? The term dawah, it's an umbrella term now. And there are so many things that have been done under this term these days online. It's just crazy, right? Everything is dawah, right? And most of the stuff is questionable, right? It's questionable. The motives may be questionable. We're not one to question them, but just the way things come across, the way we do things, sometimes it seems like, okay, not much thought has gone behind this. Have we really thought about, is this going to benefit the dawah, or is this going to harm the dawah? Have we really considered that? Have we thought about, am I the right person to talk about this, or is there someone else out there that should be talking about this? Because just because we give da'wah and we come on YouTube and social media, it doesn't mean we have now the license to talk about everything and anything in Islam. We don't automatically become scholars, right? A lot of times the problem is people don't stay in their lane. This is a huge problem, bro. Huge problem. So especially young brothers, sisters looking to get involved in the da'wah, stay in your lane. Stay in your lane. If you don't know something, don't talk about it. Don't worry about it. It's Allah's deen. Allah is there. Someone will speak about it. Someone who has the knowledge will cover it. Don't feel that you're obliged to talk about things you don't know anything about. Stay in your lane. Be as honest as you can, right? And be sincere. If you are sincerely doing this for the sake of Allah, you are doing this to please Allah, to draw closer to Allah, to seek His reward. If that's your intention, then just play it safe. Talk about the things you know about. If you don't know something, say you don't know, and just try to get people in touch with the people that do know. Simple. Don't start acting like you know everything and you can talk about everything and start bringing everything else under the sun into the dawah. It's a mess. Unfortunately, it's a mess. And, even infighting, bro, like, it's crazy. Like, sure, Muslims have disagreements. It's been the case throughout our history, right? But there's a place, there's a time and place for this stuff. Now, you're taking this and you're putting it on social media. And we know many non-Muslims are looking into Islam. And one of the first places they're going is online to learn about Islam. Now, already they have all of this nonsense from the media and all of these places talking bad about Islam. And if they come across your videos and they see, okay, mashallah, there's two Muslims here, and they're arguing with each other over a very trivial matter, what's the perception that's going to create in their minds? Are they're going to be like, hold on a second, These guys are claiming to worship the creator of the heavens and the earth, and they are just trying to kill each other over a very small thing. And they've made a whole 3-hour-long video about this. It just looks bad from a dawah perspective. You know, there's no hikmah in this. So be wise. Try to be wise. Ask yourself the question, you know, is there a need for me to talk about this? Am I the right person? And is this going to benefit the dawah, or is it going to harm the dawah? Before you do anything, especially on social media, really sit down and ask yourself these questions. You know, especially young brothers and sisters. Don't just think, okay, controversy going on here, I need to make a video. Yalla, you know, I'm going to go put out the camera, make the video. No, stop and think about it. You know, is it going to benefit the dawah, harm the dawah? Am I the right person to talk about this? Why am I doing this? What's my intention? You know, so we need to be cognizant of these things, inshallah.
Inshallah, barakallah. We are still not that brave of a nation. I would say all of us in ex-Yugoslavia. So we don't have. We are actually the first stream that does this.
MashaAllah.
So, but many youngsters may follow. So the advice, inshallah, will stick. But at the moment, we are not at that stage. People are not even brave to.
May Allah make you guys the example, inshallah. Inshallah.
Ameen. Barakallahu fiqh. Barakallahu fiqh. Sheikh, you want to say something? You've been quiet for so long. Before the brother goes, please.
No, Jazakallah khair. It was a pleasure to listen to our brother Imran Hussein. I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot of things, and I hope he will visit us and return to our podcast one more time, inshallah, or many more times, inshallah, in future.
Inshallah. Jazakallah khair, brothers. Really nice spending time with you guys. May Allah bless you all for your efforts and keep it up, mashallah. You know, it's inspiring many people. Even inshallah, may Allah guide Philip. You know, I'm sure he'll keep coming, and eventually he'll get to the point where he realizes, you know, that it's just not working. It's pointless just carrying on refuting things which don't need to be refuted. And may Allah guide him and the people that watch the stream, inshallah.
Okay, just one more thing. Please ask Brother Salahuddin Patel. I've been with him trying to get him to address Hinduism for now several months, and for some reason, I don't know, is it an Indian thing or is it a Muslim thing or whatever?
No, he's just been very busy, bro, recently. He was in Qatar for the World Cup, and he's been traveling for a few months. So inshallah, when he comes back next week, I'll speak to him and I'll tell him to contact you, inshallah.
Please grab him. We already arranged a couple of times a date, and then something fell off and this and that. And I'm thinking, you know what, I'll need to address him publicly. So no, I did. So inshallah, please.
I'll send him this clip, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair.
Brother, inshallah. May Allah bless you and take your leave, inshallah, now.
Jazakallah khairan, barakallah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.